Welcome to Whispers to a Bride, where we talk about the stuff no one else is talking about. We are going deep on the emotional aspects of getting married, the stress, drama, and turbulence that affects your own sense of identity and your closest relationships. We are talking about what it means to be a bride and how to navigate this sacred time with more grace and ease. I'm your host, Kara Gassabay. As a life coach and therapist, I'm going to be sharing super practical tips so that you can not only rise to the occasion of your wedding, but also your life. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, we are doing our final of 3 Q&A episodes, and today is all about mom issues. I think this is one of the most common things that clients bring to me is just sort of navigating this season with your mother or your mother-in-law, the parental figure in your life. And so what I like about this episode is we're going to look at sort of 3 different scenarios, and they're really different. But I think sometimes we fail to appreciate sort of the difference in how our moms want to be involved in our wedding, and some ways in which, like, if we can just chill out a little, we can see it as a huge benefit. And in other ways, we're like, we need to really put up some really strong boundaries in order to protect our sanity on this day and in the next chapter. So this will give you the full range of sort of mom issues. Enjoy.
How to balance our family's expectations versus what we want. For the most part, it's going well. But for example, we did not care for cake or dessert, but my parents wanted it, so they offered to pay. I was stressed with spending more on desserts than we wanted, but they assured me not to worry about it. We decided to give in as it's less stressful, and I love mini pies. I mean, this is such a classic sort of dynamic that happens around weddings, right? Like, we have our ideas, our parents have their ideas, and then when our parents or whoever's our support system, whenever their idea isn't on the table, they'll often say, well, that's okay, I'll pay for it. And so then for some people that can solve the problem right there. But for other people, it can feel like, yeah, but that wasn't our plan. That wasn't our vision. And it can create almost like this strange power dynamic. And I always like to really just pull all the way back when I can and think about what you're really fighting for. I feel like Bree, the asker of this question, really sort of like is onto herself when she's like, we decided to give in because it's less stressful, and I kind of win because I get like the mini pies, which like I'm not opposed to. And I think that is part of it. So much of wedding planning, I feel like, is about having a vision and executing it and being in control and being the stylist and being the one and being the decider. And that's okay. That's good. But then there's this aspect of weddings, and this is the part that makes them so magical. When you look back in history, it's like it was other people gathering around the couple, and they're bringing something to the table as like an offering. And I think a lot of times what you're seeing with these parents is like, it feels like power and control, but I think it's also just, I want to get in there and be a part of it. And there's something really sacred about people wanting to be a part of your big day. Of course, egos and money and all these things complicate it. But at its core, people want to share in this because they love you, they love love. It's just sharing in the goodness. So I love to remind my clients, just do not forget how good it feels when you give someone something and they accept it, whether it's a compliment or a gift, or even like you see a mom with a stroller and you grab the door, like, yeah, she could have done it, but like, how good do you feel that you were able to like step in there and just help a little? Like, you feel it. So when we let our loved ones come in with their gestures that were kind of like, well, I didn't really want it, but if it's no harm to you and it doesn't ruin your day, I always say, let it in, because you're letting in love. And look, you're getting a bonus of some mini pies. So again, I think this is such a great reminder. Don't see every injection from family and loved ones as a control or an ego thing. It can really be just wanting to offer an involvement and a really good gesture. So always try it on with that lens. Of course, there are always exceptions, but I just love to remind people to be open for that, because that community aspect of weddings, when you look back over history, like that's what they're about. That's why we invite these people. That's why why we don't just, for the most part, go off and do it on our own, because there's something cool about the community aspect. Okay, I could clearly go on forever about that. It's just, especially after that pandemic where we couldn't have that, it's just so special. Anyway, okay. Next question. My future mother-in-law has a tendency to make everything about herself, even outside of wedding planning. How can we arrange for her to have a moment in the spotlight without giving her, or without allowing her to take over the whole day? My fiance would prefer that she not give a speech. Okay, Allison, this is, again, quite a sort of delicate, but also super common sort of conundrum, right? We have this person who we value and honor, especially for their role in the wedding day, mother, future mother-in-law, and she'll have that role in your life, right? So that's an important person that we're paying attention to. This is not like sorority sister who we need to just tell, like, simmer down, and like, this is someone that we need to sort of pay attention to because it affects us going forward after this day. And so how do you give her that feeling that she's looking for so desperately, which is a moment in the sun, a little shine on her, some of the spotlight, but not letting her sort of railroad your whole vision? And I think your fiance probably knows best the whole speech thing. So I think sometimes it's good to sort of trust that, take that speech thing off the table. And there's just a million different little ways that you could do this. But I think, you can Google it and you'll see a ton, like, you could have her like stand up at the reception. You can have her stand up and like you give a little speech to her where you're like thanking her, or you could give her a special gift. You could have her do something in the ceremony that is like not talking, but like physically sort of prominent. Like, I know for my wedding, we had the parents, we had the mothers stand up and like we gifted them something that was like a little surprise thing, but like they got to stand up and we really said something, like we really did a thing, because I had a similar mother-in-law dynamic. But the most important thing I think you can do is ask her, get from her, like, what would feel good? What are you looking for, lady? Because sometimes we think we know, but we don't know. And when we're scared that she wants too much, we then pull away from it. And I'm telling you, like, let's lean in and say, like, what do you like? What part of the wedding would you be? Because you just don't know. My mother-in-law wanted to make a rice dish. And I'm like, okay, that I didn't expect, because that's a lot of work on you. But like, that's what she wanted to do. So it's like, okay, I'll put you in touch with the caterer and see if like we can make that happen. And like, boom, she's off to the races. I didn't care to add another dish. It was not something I would plan, but I'm like, you want to do that? Okay, good. And then everyone could be talking about her dish. Okay. The other thing was like the takeaway gifts. She really, really had this idea in mind, not something I would pick, but like, it was just like a project where she could get really into it and like execute it and own and feel proud of. And it kind of gave her the spotlight because people were talking about it. So I just think for you, like, just think about what would be a way that you can honor her, because it is a big day for her, not as big as yours, but it's still important for this close part of the family. It is a big moment for them that they have been thinking about for a very long time. That's the thing we have to remember with the parents, is that like, for some people, they think about their child's wedding like the whole time. So that's why there's all this like extra, we're kind of like, can you chill? But they're just carrying a lifetime of hope and pride and excitement and fear and anxiety, and talk about the passage of time. It's a very big deal for them to feel like time is passing. And this is a moment that like just really changes everything in a family dynamic. And so just have some tenderness for what she's going through. Lean in and ask her, like, is there something she wants to do at the wedding that maybe, you didn't know about, or she didn't know about it? But yeah, there's lots of ways. You can have her carry a little bouquet. I mean, there's just walk down the aisle if she wasn't before, just something that is, again, not going to take away anything from you, but it will give something to her that she will always have that memory of that gesture of her daughter-in-law asking how she wanted to be involved in the day. I think, especially coming from you, it's such a beautiful, gracious act. And again, still holding your boundaries of what are some acceptable things that will work for you, but see what she wants. It might be so much easier than you even think. Okay, next question. This one's a little long, so we will go through it from Hannah because it's a lot happening, which is often the case around weddings. How do I navigate a parent who is overstepping boundaries? My mom can be a bit much, especially when things don't go her way, or when I politely try to tell her what our vision is for the wedding. I know that I should be grateful that my mom is trying to contribute, but I feel uncomfortable because she's crossing boundaries. She always makes everything about her and has even noted that she was considering getting a white dress for the wedding for herself. Some examples. She booked a wedding photographer after we asked her not to. She went ahead and hired a photographer for us and had paid 50% that we would need to pay the other 50% by a certain date that we did not have an option because it was already paid for and non-refundable. Second example, when I tried on wedding gowns, she made a huge deal about how I need to find a dress that isn't pretty because it will make her look bad. I have to invite her to the wedding. So how do I survive with the least amount of drama while still trying to fulfill our vision for our wedding? Okay. This is intense. And I appreciate that you were able to give us a question with such sort of concrete examples, because I think a lot of times sort of just like in conversation, we're like, oh, my mother's taking over my wedding, or my mom's being a little kooky about like her desires for my big day. And it's so important to appreciate that, like, that can mean a lot of different things. And in this case, what you're talking about is some actual, like, very real transgressions against your desires and your budget. Like, to put 50% up and then say that you're on the hook for the other 50 when you didn't agree to that is pretty, like, out of bounds, right? Like, we wouldn't do that to anybody. So there's no reason to do that to your own child. And I think that you're right on to feel like these boundaries are being crossed, because they are. The wearing the white dress is something that, like, actually comes up. It's come up a few times over on TikTok. I get this sort of question a lot. And again, all of this stuff is so annoying and it's so sort of obnoxious and wrong. And that I want you to know, like, this is not normal mother of the bride stuff. Like, this is something different and something extra. And I think, like, you sort of already know because you've lived a life with this human. So I think what's really important is just to remember what happens with boundaries, right? Like, we don't put up a boundary and then tell the person, like, here's the boundary, don't go over it. We say, here's the boundary and here's what I'm going to do if you go over it, right? So I think that's the really important thing, is just to remember you cannot control her. She is full Wild West out there doing all kinds of things, but you can just control your response to it, your reaction to it. And that is a huge task. And I absolutely hope that you have the support to navigate this. I think one of the most important things for your wedding day is to really think about the distance that you can put between yourself and your mother, sort of physically, emotionally, logistically. And I often encourage people to, like, bring in the handler, right? Like, does she have a sister who gets this? Is there a cousin? Is there someone else who can sort of run interference? Because it sounds like she needs a ton of attention and she likes to sort of cause these, like, mini fires and crises that somehow you're expected to put out. And that's a dynamic that obviously you know all too well, but on your wedding day, we want to sort of mitigate it. I think that there's a point at which less is more with a person like this who just will stop at nothing, and the encroachment, and it's just a whole lot. And I think you just want to be really clear, like, okay, if she does this, I'm going to do this. If she does this, I'm going to do this. And I think the white dress one, it just gets so many people just really going. And I'm like, and again, without knowing you, Hannah, it's, like, really hard. That's why I love to sort of work with clients where I can kind of feel out what's happening. But it's like, just know, for like 95% of the people who would see a mom wearing a white dress on her daughter's wedding day, like, we know that's like a her thing. and not like a you thing. Like, right. I think it's just so important to remember, like, people can't really take away from the bride. And the harder that they try and it doesn't affect you, the more you actually do shine, if you know what I mean. So like the more sort of emotional elegance you can bring to this very unsavory, very unfair situation, the better it's just going to go. Because not only it's not going to suck out all of your energy and add to the toxicity, but like people get it. People know. And you are sort of doing your best to like walk a really fine line of respecting her role as your mother. So obviously she's going to be there, but also like we're not indulging the drama and the debate and getting pulled in and sucked into like creating a circus. Like people are actually going to probably ask her, like, why are you wearing a white dress? Like, you know what I mean? It's going to be a her thing. And I think that's just so important to just realize it doesn't take away your whole, you're solid, you know what's going on, and let it play out, because people are also going to see that. Hopefully that can bring just like a little bit of peace of mind to yourself, but definitely seek out some professional. I would, if I'm sure you have a therapist, but if you don't, like this kind of level of mother-daughter drama is really, really tough, especially if you're going to have kids in the future. So I would definitely encourage you to get some help navigating these things, because I think also we got to realize this is a big change for her. And so you getting married just means all kinds of things to her. So her behavior is going to escalate over this time. So I'm just really sorry for you. I just want you to remember that like literally no one can take away the attention from you. And that's just going to be really obvious to the people who are sort of emotionally healthy and see you for you and are just going to be, I'm already so proud of how you are handling this and navigating this. And like the photographer, you can just simply say to an email, like, I had no idea this was happening. I have other arrangements for photography. I'm sorry that my mom miscommunicated. You know what I mean? Like, and this person probably knows too, right? So you be you and put that space and definitely get support.
Okay, so I hope that was helpful to sort of see the variation and the different ways sort of the mother-daughter drama plays out around wedding planning. But like anything, there are a million other scenarios that this can play into. So if you are struggling with your mother-daughter dynamic during this season, it is the perfect time to reach out and get some support and get some clarity and perspective on it. And I am here. And also, if your mom wants to talk to me, I do. I talk to moms all the time who are struggling because, like I've said in a million different ways, this is a really intense time for them. Not that that takes away from what it is in your life, but it's just the fact that this is a big moment in their evolution, and it marks like a big moment in their life as well. And they might not be handling that well, or might not be seeing their issues and your issues as very different. They're all sort of, a lot of projection can happen. So please book your session at KaraMorning.com. And if you have a question about sort of your mama drama or anything else, find me on the socials, Kara, the bridal coach. And then if you could like or review this podcast, I would be very, very, very grateful. And until next time, I am wishing you nothing but bridal bliss.